All right. I definitely thought we were done talking about snow and the implications of what happened this past, couple weeks ago. But no, we are still dealing with the fallout. It was strange. It's like we went right from snow to ice to rain. The streets had absolutely no time to recover. So what was left behind? Potholes everywhere. I was just thinking to myself today, actually, I'm probably a better driver now because I have to be super vigilant. Every corner, there's some sort of pothole. Like, these are craters that have been left behind. I bet you didn't know how potholes were made. Okay, see? So our friend Rebecca Schleicher here at News Channel 5 showed us how these massive craters, you might call them potholes, are created.
They form when snow melt or rain seeps through cracks in the pavement. When the moisture goes through that freeze-thaw cycle, the ice expands, then melts away, leaving cracks underneath. Passing traffic then weakens the pavement, cracking it further. And that void that you can see there collects more water when it rains, and during the next freeze, the void gets bigger. So vehicles driving over the weakened pavement pound it until that surface breaks and just collapses, creating the pothole.
Well, I didn't know this. I never really thought how it actually gets made. Now we know. The other thing, of course, apparently the asphalt plants, well, many of them are actually closed during the wintertime.
Feels like
Did you hear that?
Time we need.
Exactly. You would imagine that that would be the time that we need some of this stuff in order for cities to make up for the fact that these plants are closed. We have to use what's known as a cold mix, which is essentially a Band-Aid for a long-term issue. Thankfully, in the not so distant future here, some of these plants are coming back online, and so we get the hot mix, not the cold mix anymore. So we get the hot mix, and that is more of a long-term solution for covering up potholes. A lot of things I didn't know.
There's a lot more science to filling potholes than just throwing some asphalt in it and calling it a day, is what you're.
But see, I don't think most people know this. Can you tell that I'm just kind of like, I'm trying not to. There's anxiety here, folks. One of these days, I'm gonna walk into this building and you're gonna see me in such a terrible mood. Pothole. Just immediately think pothole. There was a $1,000 bill associated with what just happened in the morning. It is important to mention that if you do see a problem pothole, you can always contact TDOT. Otherwise, if it's something local here in Nashville, you can contact the Hub Nashville app and they can take care of the pothole. I'm interested in seeing how long it takes to clear up like a problem pothole. There's one pothole in mind.
So that right there is the pothole in question. I drive down Jefferson almost every day. I'm constantly on the lookout for that one pothole. I know there are a few others that have now been patched up on the same street, so maybe Metro already has it on their radar, but frankly, this one right here, it's a problem. And I know you might be thinking, I've seen worse, Levi. Well, it's not about that. It's about the inconvenience of having to dodge this thing every day.
It might be a couple days, might be a couple weeks. I don't know, but I think people want to know how effective this Hub Nashville app is, considering, what do they say, 25,500 potholes they covered up last year? Like they actually covered last year?
I'm about to do some math.
You're doing math?
I'm going to do some math. So 25,500.
Okay.
I'm going to divide it by 365. I know they're not working every day.
Sure.
They fill, on average, 70 potholes a day.
You hear that? 70 potholes a day. If we're doing the math correctly, which we are journalists, of course, but if we're doing the math correctly, 70 potholes a day. Listen, I can only say that I've seen some of this stuff in action, and I'm hoping for the best. That's a lot of potholes. I'm almost done talking about severe weather that we had a couple weeks ago, but I promise this is actually a good story. So the city of Linville, Tennessee was just flooded with donated drinkable water after the city ran out of their own. During the last cold snap, the city ran out of water for days. News Channel 5's Hannah McDonald showed up and talked to people about what they were doing to, just get by. After we aired that story, well, many of you actually donated up to 20,000 bottles of water. News Channel 5's Jason Lamb actually followed up with the folks of Linville by showing up and talking to the mayor. And, he couldn't have been more grateful for all the help that they were getting.
I do appreciate all that Channel 5 has done because it really put it out where people would know what was going on here in our town.
I'm gonna tell you, people just started flooding us with water. And our churches around here started bringing in water. And we've given away hundreds of cases of water.
They were trying to do the best they could with what they had. And now they have all these people from across the state saying, we want to help too.
At some point, we have to look at the infrastructure because this happened once. If you change nothing, this could happen again.
Of course, if we're going to continue to get cold snaps like this, we're probably going to run into the same situation again. And I'm sure the people of Linville want to put all of this behind them and actually have something that works. We have to do more preparation. That's the bottom line. We have to do more preparation, whether it's with potholes, whether it's with trying to plow streets more efficiently, or just making sure that people have access to running water when the temperatures dip this low.
So just reading the description of what happened and why they ran out of water. It says most of Linville's 550 residents get their water from the Fairview Utility District out of Pulaski. Several water main breaks due to cold drained that supply. Linville is at the end of that line.
That in itself, I feel better knowing that we can make some changes in Pulaski and people in Linville won't have to suffer. We just can't do nothing. You know? Let's not forget, folks, lawmakers are back at the State House coming up with one bill after another that they hope can turn into future laws. Well, a few things caught my attention, this being one of them. Tennessee lawmakers have proposed 2 bills that would limit access to explicit content online unless you verify your age. Listen, there's a lot that we can talk about in this, and there's a lot that might be a little more tricky to talk about here. Some of you may have heard similar bills like this happening around the country. If you log on to these websites, you have to verify that you are of age. We're talking about porn. We're talking about porn websites where they're now saying you need to give us proof. The way that you verify, in a lot of cases, is by using your driver's license. The second bill says that if you're a minor, in order to access social media sites, you would need to verify your age and get a parent's permission.
For adults, if that's what you wish to look at, partake in, read about, whatever, you're an adult, you can do what you want to. But we want to protect our children from that type of pornography and from some of those type of just really negative aspects of the internet.
Most social media sites already require this in their terms of service.
Yes, absolutely.
Facebook already requires a teenager to get their parents' permission. They verify that by asking, did you get your parents' permission?
Yeah.
So the enforceability of this is questionable.
We're clicking buttons to say that we are old enough and to say that I got my parents' permission.
And I'm sure as a teenager, you never lied about getting your parents' permission.
Why would you?
Something. Yeah, I mean, no one ever would.
Here's what it boils down to for Republican lawmakers here in the state. They say, you know what? You need an ID to get into a bar. You need an ID to get into some movies, right? So why shouldn't you need an ID to access what could be, you know, much more explicit content online? That's the argument, at least.
One of the ways to verify is ID. Another that is cropping up more. Some websites are requiring a face scan.
Yeah.
You have to grab out your phone.
Okay.
They take a picture of your face and they use AI to go, yeah, that's the face of a 22-year-old.
Nope. I have a problem with that. It's not like I have a problem with the intention behind all of this. The language of the bill here is very vague. One can make the argument that it is vague for a reason, because now it leaves the door open for not only IDs being used to verify, but facial scans.
I think that's a question for probably another day, but yeah.
Wes.
What happens with this data of verified?
Oh, that's not a question for another day. I wrote it right here.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I got it right here. Because you have to remember, when you are giving your personal information to any website, there is the risk of this information being sent someplace else that you didn't, authorize. And when we're talking about something as sensitive as what you might imagine some of these websites are, now you are tying your name and your personal information to whatever you're watching.
Who's to say the state doesn't try to access this information at a later date?
Because who's enforcing this, right? The state would be enforcing it. So the state would know what they choose to do with that information. That's the question. As far as what people deem to be explicit content, well, I'm not sure they really went into detail for that. This is all, very much in the early stages of committees. And so they may have to like narrow things down and figure out like what is explicit. I want to know what you think. Okay, should we require age verification to access some of this material online, or do you think there's a better solution out there? Nearly 30,000 firearms have been stolen in Tennessee in the decade since it was allowed for you to leave your gun in your car without any repercussions if the gun is unsecured. News Channel 5 investigative reporter Phil Williams has been digging through the numbers, and he found out that back in 2022 alone, more than 5,000 firearms were stolen from vehicles.
But when News Channel 5 Investigates crunched the data, we discovered that in 2013, the year the law was first passed, there were just 46 guns reported stolen from motor vehicles for the entire state of Tennessee. 3 years later, that number has shot up to more than 2,000 reported cases. The next year, more than 4,000. By 2022, there were almost 5,400 guns reported stolen from cars statewide.
And that's according to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. They also found that in many of these cases, these guns landed in the hands of people who aren't legally allowed to possess any firearms. Phil pointed out in his story that there's been a renewed interest in gun laws here in Tennessee since the Covenant School shooting that happened last year. People want to know how folks are getting access to firearms and if people who shouldn't have firearms are still capable of getting them. 2013 is really when we started seeing some of the easing of gun laws here in Tennessee. And that started with the law that made it okay for you to leave your firearm in your car without some of those repercussions.
Hindsight, was that a good bill?
Oh, absolutely.
Jeremy Faison from rural East Tennessee was one of the bill's sponsors.
My district is incredibly pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun, don't touch my guns. Everywhere I go, that's what I hear. That's what I was asked to do. That's what I did.
Yeah, and then you fast forward a few years to where in the time that I've been here, I've seen the gun laws change, right? Now you can openly carry a firearm around Tennessee without a permit and without any sort of training.
This absolutely makes us a safer state, this bill as a whole.
Is that it is our right, given by God in this country, to keep and bear arms.
Think back, for example, I don't know if you saw what happened in Memphis, right? Where there was a guy walking outside of a school with an assault rifle, and he was just walking down the sidewalk. There was this very powerful photo of this guy, and it appeared like he was tinkering around with, you know, the rifle. But the school right next to him had to lock down. Like they shut everything down and, you know, bunkered in place because they weren't quite sure what this person's intentions were. Well, the person just kept on walking. Now, in Tennessee, perfectly legal. And parents were, well, they were pretty upset.
When parents called police, they were told
that he could walk around outside of a school with this military-grade weapon designed to kill people in mass. And until he pulls that trigger, he is not committing a crime.
that there was nothing they could do.
My kids aren't in danger because he hasn't fired the weapon? I don't get it.
Mind you, when they were creating some of these laws, we had state lawmakers saying that they were trying to preserve our God-given rights to bear arms. That stood out to me because we are applying faith to gun laws. I know it's all up for interpretation. They say that the state is safer now because people have access to firearms when they need it the most. But what Phil has dug up is that there are actually a lot more cases of people being harmed, people being threatened, people being killed by firearms that in some cases were stolen, or by firearms being so widely available.
And this graph shows the national rate for child deaths involving firearms, but in Tennessee, the rate of children killed by guns has skyrocketed. In the case of guns left unsecured in someone's car, Faison says he doesn't think it's his job to make it a crime for gun owners who make it easy for their guns to be stolen.
If you do, who's going to report that anymore?
If you make it a crime not to report.
So how do we even know that was ever stolen? So I didn't know it was stolen. I mean, you're criminalizing a person who just got criminalized.
I'm not going to go into all of the data because Phil did an incredible job of all that, and you can check it out on News Channel 5 page, and you can read the story there. You can watch the story there. Bottom line is this: I want to know from you: has easier access to firearms made you feel safer? in Tennessee? Or do you feel that lawmakers should tighten gun laws here in Tennessee? What do you think? I want to talk a little bit about Millersville. So the city of Millersville has gone through major changes in just the last week or so. They fired their city manager, they fired their city attorney, and they fired their police chief, who had only been on the job for about 4 weeks. It was like a snowball effect. One thing happened, and then the other, and then the other. There was a commissioners meeting that took place, and the commissioners had just sworn in a new commissioner, Alyssa Hewling. 15 minutes later, and the subject comes up of whether or not they need to fire the city manager, Scott Avery. Now, if you recognize that name, it's because we've done a number of stories out of Millersville over the last, it's been 3 years. I've covered Millersville for 3 years. If you recognize that name, we had just talked about him and some of the issues with managing the city police department. Well, the city ends up firing Scott Avery that night because now they have 3 votes to 2. Alyssa Hewling being the tiebreaker. That same night, they hire a replacement, an interim city manager, Tina Tobin, who was in the room and has no real experience as a city manager anywhere else on her resume. People had a lot of questions. So people asked the mayor, like, why are we doing this? Why are we voting this way? And the mayor, well, he had an interesting response. He said, well, he's been here for at least 12 months. And because of that, we don't have to give him a reason for why we're getting rid of him. That was it.
Why do they think that as elected officials, they don't need to give our constituents a reason why they're doing things? You know, we're here to serve the constituents. It's not the other way around.
The next day, this new city manager fires the city attorney. So I report the story, right? About the city manager being gone, about the city attorney being gone, about the city of Millersville being managed by someone who doesn't have much experience doing the job. And then 2 days later, I get a call that the police chief has been fired. I'd done a story on Rob Richmond when he first was sworn in because, you know, I've been following all of the dealings and all of the fallouts from one resignation after another. He was now the 4th police chief in Millersville since 2021 when I first started reporting on them. They've seen 4 police chiefs in that time. They've seen now 3 city managers. Millersville is very small.
This is a everyone knows everyone kind of town.
Yeah, a lot of turnover here. He gets the job. I show up to interview him, and I talked to Rob and I said, you know, why Millersville? And he said, listen, Levi, it's the perfect challenge. I want to be able to come to a community. And, you know, at this point, he was long retired from law enforcement. He put in 30 plus years over in Austin, Texas, comes to Millersville, thinks that he is going to be the change that they've asked for. All of these different policies that we've been reporting on, he says, we're taking care of that, Levi. I said, okay, cool. The man uprooted his family from Austin, Texas, sold his house out there, came to Millersville, lasted 4 weeks before this new city manager, who just got the job, fires him.
There are a lot of jobs in government that are clearly political in nature. Police chief doesn't seem like it's one of those jobs that should be political in nature.
I'm glad you said that, because Rob Richmond has told me in so many ways, I don't want to be political. You know, I think a lot of people were cautiously optimistic when they heard something like that. What we're seeing now is a city that has said, we want to make change, but we also understand that elections have consequences. One election has changed the face of Millersville. They've hired a new city attorney, Bryant Kroll. Bryant Kroll is the attorney who has been filing lawsuit after lawsuit against the city of Millersville since 2021. I don't know, you caught that. The attorney who's been filing lawsuit after lawsuit against the city of Millersville since 2021 is now their acting city attorney. And I asked him, is there a conflict of interest here? He says no, because none of his lawsuits are pending.
And so the person that defended the city of Millersville in those lawsuits is now out of a job.
Yep.
And has been replaced by the person that filed the lawsuits.
Sure. Last thing, TSU. I want to end on a good note. The Nashville Predators have just teamed up with a TSU professor to come up with a new design for Black History Month. Kalina Sales is an associate professor over at TSU, and she studies art design. And, you know, what she did is she combined a lot of African historical culture with what she says is contemporary Black culture. The design actually traces its roots back to the Akan people of Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. Not to mention, it's a black jersey. I need one, maybe two. One will be fine. One will be fine. The Preds will wear these jerseys throughout Black History Month, which leads me to my next point, which is that we are hosting a Black History Month special of our own, February 29th. Nashville has such a rich history out here. And when I was covering some of these stories on a more consistent basis, I was learning so much. And I think not only should we be doing that all year round, but when there's a month dedicated to this, then yes, absolutely.
Do you know how many Black players there are in the NHL?
How many Black? Oh boy, 15?
34.
34? Really?
That is still an incredibly small percentage.
Well, yes, but I thought my number was high.
I think it's awesome that a sport that is so predominantly white is celebrating Black History Month like this.
Think of the connection to TSU. TSU will soon become the first Division I hockey program in the state of Tennessee. That is a historically Black college, folks. Now we have TSU once again showing that they can be diverse, okay? They can spread out and do a number of different things, and hockey can be one of them. Do you have anything else?
That's all I got.
That's what you got? That's what I got. Like, share, comment. We've got all of these stories on our website at newschannel5.com. Check us out there, or watch more of this, right? Watch more of this. We need feedback. Just let me know how we're doing. Thank you, and bye.